seeing the presentation, not the presentation mode. But we are recording also, so folks know if you didn't notice that. And I think we'll just jump right in if that's all right. So I am Guillermo Metz with the Energy and Climate Change team at Cornell Cooperative Extension, Tompkins County. And we'll be presenting today about a NYSACC program called the Lansing Non-Pipes Alternatives. Give you a sense of what we're trying to do with it. Essentially, the background is that there was a reliability issue going back to about 2015 in the gas pipeline in the Lansing general service area. So what that means is that at times of peak use on essentially the coldest days when most people are firing up their furnaces and boilers, the pressure in the line could potentially drop to below what's considered safe. And their models were showing, NYSACC's models were showing that this was a possibility and therefore something that they needed to address. And they came up with a couple proposals. Essentially, the main proposal is bringing in more gas. That's the traditional solution. And a community group, including some engineers and folks from Cornell, proposed another concept of adding gas compressors to increase the pressure along the line. So essentially not bringing in more gas, but just increasing the pressure as needed. Those options were considered, but the community also came out with a third option, and this was led by a task force of the county and its members. And the proposal was how about we reduce the gas use overall? Would that help address the issue? And so this was kind of looked at, and folks looked at what would that take? What would that actually look like? So the benefits of non-pipes alternatives were that it saves NYSACC and the ratepayers money overall. It was a cheaper solution than the other ones being considered. Health and safety improved as more people use less gas, or people use less gas. And climate change, we can help address climate change locally through gas reductions. So the final point here is that there are affordable off-the-shelf solutions available today. This was not something that we needed technological solutions to be developed. This was something that we could start addressing right away. So the non-pipes alternatives was developed. Around September 2020, NYSACC filed with the Public Service Commission, and it was approved about a year later, with the in-service about a year after that. So things moved slowly, but it was approved with originally a suite of 7 projects. Since then, one has dropped out because they weren't able to put the resources necessary toward it. But the goal was to reduce gas use by this number here, 54.6 thousand cubic feet per hour of gas. And that translates to about 566 therms total. This was proposed as a 3-year program, and I'll get into what these 6 projects look like a little bit. But over on the right, you can see the 3 different colored zones, essentially, which are the highest impact zone in pink, where the reductions in that zone matter the most. In orange, they matter still, but less so. And in yellow, they matter less even, but also have some impact. And then zone 4 has really very little or no impact to the gas demand in the Lansing moratorium area. So the portfolio of projects that I can talk about here are these 6. And I can't get into too much detail on some of them because they haven't finalized their contracts with NYSACC. But there's a residential heat pump program that adds additional incentives. And I'm going to go back really quickly to these zones. The additional incentives are quite healthy in the pink zone, where the highest impact is 100% of the additional incentives, 40% of these additional incentives in the orange zone, and 10% of the additional incentives in the yellow or greenish zone. And additional incentives are on top of what NYSACC is already offering everyone across the whole service area. So these are specific to Lansing moratorium area, but they do stack on top of those other ones. So they're quite robust. There's a commercial geothermal system, a community geothermal heat pump system, and an energy efficiency at 2 public authority buildings. non-residential fuel switching, and education and outreach. And I'll get into the ones that I can talk about that have signed contracts already. So the single commercial geothermal heat pump system is at the Cornell Child Care Center. It's the first geothermal system on Cornell's Ithaca campus, and the building is not connected to the rest of the Cornell district heating and cooling system. So it's a standalone, and it's a pilot essentially for what can be done with other buildings. It's about a 16,000 square foot facility, and it's expected to reduce about 0.4 thousand of that total 56 or so. So it's a modest reduction, but it's an important part of the whole project, and it's currently in the early construction phase. Energy efficiency at two public authority buildings are essentially the Lansing Central School System District Middle and High School are doing a little bit of energy efficiency upgrades and some improved controls, and then they're getting higher efficiency gas boilers. So they are not going to heat pumps, either geothermal or air source. Those were looked at. They were considered too expensive, and they do have a geothermal system there now, but it wasn't considered worth expanding that. So instead, they're going to more efficient gas, and that is expected to reduce overall use by about 4.1 thousand cubic feet per hour. Education and outreach is what we're leading here at Tompkins County Cooperative Extension, and what we're doing is essentially bringing attention to all of these programs and these projects, and primarily one that I'll talk about next. Outreach to small businesses to some extent, but it's mostly to residential customers, and we are working closely with the other projects in the portfolio to help the community learn about them and get engaged in some way if they can.
I'll tell you about it later.
The other project that has the highest impact of all is the residential heat pump program. Essentially, this is like a heat smart campaign, which many of you are familiar with, that is being led by Earth Sensitive Solutions. They responded to an RFP, and they proposed working with three companies, three partner firms that will do the actual installs. So the additional incentives have to go through them essentially because of the structure of this RFP with NYSACC. But they are tasked with reducing the largest amount, about 42.7 thousand cubic feet per hour. And to date, they've reduced, I'm sorry, it's 427. No, I'm sorry, it's 42.7 MCFH, but it's 73.35 therms per hour reduced to date. So again, that's about 533 total that they're looking at. But in terms of MCFH, it's about, I think it was 56 total. So they're about 17% toward the goal in about a year into the project. And that is, they're not entirely on target, but that first year is going to be the hardest to really get the community involved and aware of all of this work. So we're working with them, and again, they are moving forward. They're getting projects all the time. Sorry, it's not advancing. There we go. So that's all I have. I wanted to go through those quickly. That's my contact information, gm52@cornell.edu. And feel free to contact me anytime at that email. That's my cell phone number, which I had for another presentation. I'd suggest not using that, please. Thank you. But I can put in another work phone number if you'd like to reach me. 607-272-2292. I'm sorry, 2292 extension 185. 272-2292 extension 185, or that email. Again, we'll hold questions till the break, but please feel free to put things in the chat and raise your hand at that time, and I'll stop sharing. Thank you. The next presenter is going to be Gay Nicholson. And so if you're ready to go, you should be able to share your screen.
Okay. Are we good?
Looks good.
All right. Well, I'm Gay Nicholson. I'm president of Sustainable Finger Lakes, and thanks for inviting me to share about our 2 heat pump pilot projects for lower income residents that we've initiated this past year. You find the button there. Some of you may be familiar with our work on clean energy and inequality. I designed our Finger Lakes Climate Fund to address both of these critical problems when we launched it back in 2010. And you're going to be hearing from Holly Hutchinson in a few minutes about the Climate Fund. But so far, we've helped 88 families across 13 Finger Lakes counties make energy efficiency improvements with the help of over 150,000 in carbon offset grant awards. And back in 2019, we were awarded a $250,000 grant from NYSACC to combine our Climate Fund grants with additional subsidies for heat pumps for lower income families. And our success at implementing that grant led to the invitation to apply to their innovative market strategies program to continue our work. So I decided to focus on rentals for our clean energy and equity pilot project because 1, Ithaca is a city of rental housing. About 77% of the housing is rented in Ithaca. And 2, housing costs are already crazy here. So home energy burdens just make that worse. And 3, I was really aware of the barriers to getting landlords to invest in energy efficiency, especially when natural gas prices are low. So our 2-year grant is going to be offering $585,000 in heat pump subsidies with a goal of converting 100 lower income rentals in the city and town of Ithaca from fossil gas to heat pumps. We've got several objectives for this pilot project. First, we're focused specifically on the 1 to 4 unit rental marketplace. This is your typical older house that's been cut up into apartments. This is really common in Ithaca and our historic housing sector. But I was surprised to find out that this category represents 24% of all of the low-income housing in New York State, and yet it's received the least amount of NYSACC incentives for energy upgrades. So we wanted to see if we could find ways to overcome the barriers to helping this sector transition to clean energy. Since it's a pilot project, we're going to be documenting our findings with both qualitative survey data and quantitative data on energy performance. We have several criteria for being in the pilot. It has to be a rental in the city or town of Ithaca on fossil gas in 1 to 4 unit buildings, and at least half of those units have to be low income households that meet the income guidelines here in the table that you see. And we're requiring that it be brought up to comfort home insulation standards before installing heat pumps. And I also limited landlords to just 5 of their rentals to be in our pilot because we wanted to have a broad impact on the community and influence the perception about electrification among local landlords. So why heat pumps? I probably don't need to go into that in detail with this group, but you're probably familiar with them, but obviously we're all pushing for electrification because of the efficiency, the health and comfort improvements, and the ability to run on renewable energy. I've been really happy to see that NYSACC has gotten a lot more rigorous recently in requiring that the thermal envelope be tightened up before they'll help pay for a heat pump. There's a lot of oversizing going on as we have many clean heat installers and not that many installation companies. But we're requiring our participating installers to either do the envelope work themselves or to have an installation partner. And they have to verify the existing envelope conditions, bring it up to a minimum comfort home standard, and then they can size the remaining heating load. When I designed our incentive program, I wanted to counteract the oversizing problem by offering the fattest incentives for the first 2 tons of heat pump capacity. A ton is 12,000 BTUs. It's just a archaic measurement of heating. So $2,500 for the per ton for the first 2 tons and $500 a ton after that. Electric panel upgrades to 200 amps are common when houses electrify, so we offer $2,000 towards that. And if a heat pump water heater is going in, we have a $500 incentive for that as well. The low-income tenants in the pilot will, like all low-income tenants, qualify for the existing NYSERDA incentives in their Empower Plus program, as well as the utility rebates that are out there for heat pumps. So this is basically increasing the stack of incentives that's already available out there. So what's required of the landlords? Well, the big requirement is that they can't raise the rent for 2 years after the heat pump is installed. They're getting all this financial help because their tenant is low income, and we don't want the tenant to see any price increases as a result of these energy efficiency improvements. If the landlord had been paying for the heat, which is typical of a whole house gas boiler, and now the tenant's going to have the heating on their electric meter, the rent must be reduced by an amount equal to that heating cost so that the net doesn't go up at all. We also want to capture the stories and experiences of the landlords and their energy data, so we have them sign a utility release form and a media release form. And we're also asking for the tenants to be very involved in this pilot. We ask them to take a home energy survey before and after heat pump installation to track their comfort issues. They're also required to attend a home energy workshop online with us to learn about things they can do as tenants to reduce their footprint and their electric bill. And we ask the tenants to also sign utility and media release forms so we can capture that information. I just wanted, sorry, to say that this pilot is asking a lot of both the landlords and the tenants, but we're hoping that the increased comfort and improved indoor air quality and the extra subsidies will all make it attractive enough to take these few extra steps with us in the pilot. It's been a lot of work to get the things geared up, but there's more yet to do. But we have a number of projects in the pipeline and others that are working through their options. So in a couple of months, we should have some stories to share with the community. I'll just wrap up with a few slides about our other low-income heat pump pilot. In many communities, more and more seniors and immigrants and other low-income residents are ending up in mobile homes, which, although they're considered affordable housing, they're also notorious for being energy hogs due to their typically poor quality windows and doors and very thin insulation. Energy bills can be as much as 70% more per square foot than a stick-built house. Plus, they're known for being extremely hot in the summer, which makes seniors vulnerable to heat stress in our changing climate. And efficient heat pumps can help with all of this. We were happy to be awarded a large grant from the Tompkins Community Recovery Fund using leftover federal emergency funds from COVID to support local projects. And ours is to upgrade 50 low-income mobile homes with heat pumps across the county. It's definitely a pilot project. There's over 4,000 mobile homes in our county. So we're concentrating on learning as much as we can about the barriers to investing in heat pumps and sharing those insights with the new county task force on mobile homes that we were part of forming last year. We've got similar basic requirements for this pilot, but the income guidelines will be different. It's a federal grant, so our awardees will have to be under the 300% of federal poverty for the size of their household, as you can see in the table here. Again, we're requiring that the envelope upgrade be done first to comfort home standards for this type of housing, which are lower standards than for a stick-built house. And we're asking that they agree to share their story with us and their energy data. Costs and incentives. We anticipate a lot of envelope work needing to be done, a lot of insulation, especially on the underbellies, to meet the insulation standard. We're mostly seeing propane and gas conversions, but surprising number of wood stoves that older senior citizens and mobile homes are wanting to, and stop having that work burden as they age in place. We are doing some electric panel upgrades, although that can be out of reach oftentimes for mobile homes and parks because of the distance between the meter and the home itself. The owners will qualify for the Empower Plus subsidies that are provided by New York State and the utility rebates, and we'll offer the same set of incentives in terms of the pricing, $5,000 for the first 2 tons. And of course, the mobile homeowners will qualify for the new federal tax credit of $2,000 for a heat pump. Our Climate Fund Coordinator, Holly Hutchinson, who you're going to hear from now, she's now talked with over 50 mobile homeowners, and we've approved 6 applications so far, and there's I think another dozen or so in the pipeline. We're learning a ton about the various barriers in this housing sector to transitioning to clean energy, and we submitted a proposal in July to a new federal grant program that we hope, if we win, we would be able to expand our work in Tompkins County, but also to adjacent counties. So I'll stop there, and we'll wait for any questions in the at the end of the session. Thanks.
Great, thank you, Gay. Next up, Rebecca, if you want to go ahead and get your slides up and ready.
Okay, thank you. It's great to see you. I'm going to just share screen. Can you see that if I share it that way?
I'm not seeing it yet.
Oh, okay.
So.
Oh, I see. Sorry.
There we go. Yep.
Oh, okay, wonderful. Well, thank you so much, and thank you for having me here. I wanted to also say thank you to the conference organizers. Have done a really wonderful job organizing all of this. And
let me just, I'm sorry, sorry to interrupt. We're seeing your desktop.
You are? Oh, okay. Sorry about that. I thought I had it all planned out. Stop share. How's that?
Perfect. Yep.
Oh, okay, great. All right. Does that work?
Yeah, just put it in presentation, I guess. We should be all set.
Okay. Yeah, it should be in presentation, but I'm going to move forward because if we could see, I don't want to take everybody's time, but can you see the slides now?
Yes. Yeah.
Thanks. So yeah, I'm here today talking about meeting climate goals and specifically bridging the policy gap to adaptation in rural areas. I'm Rebecca Morgan-Sternbrenner. I'm a senior lecturer at the Brooks School of Public Policy at Cornell University. And I really like to do service learning projects where I involved students to bring capacity to communities to implement some of the goals that we want to see in our community. And so one of the projects that we looked at was implementing climate smart communities, which many of you know is a New York State program that helps local governments take action to reduce greenhouse gas emissions and do some of and put into action some of these climate goals. And they offer rebates and all sorts of options. But what we found is that in order to participate in climate smart communities, you need a number of things. There's some challenges. One is having the capacity within those organizations to have the staff to even do those projects. So really looking at what places are able to really work with those programs and also have the political will and capacity to do it. Because in some places, this idea of implementing climate smart anything has a political overtone in it that can divide and have communities not participate. And so looking at this as a challenge, I partnered with the town of New Lebanon and such an amazing group of actors and leaders in that community, with the town supervisor and Tishria Houtling, Steve Powers, the chair for the New Lebanon Climate Smart Communities Task Force, and Mark, who is part of that task force as well. And we work with the community through student service learning projects to start implementing and empowering some of these climate smart community goals so that that community could take advantage of these programs. And I'm going to show you talk about how we did that. So maybe you can get some ideas and replicate it. And so with the way that we approached it was twofold. One is we partnered with Cornell universities to bring the capacity, so students could have projects and bring that time and capacity to invest in looking into the different opportunities and options, and using students through student learning experiences and internships to give the capacity to this community to get the work done that needed to be done. The second was to very deliberately choose programs that would be positive for a wide range of perspectives within that community, because that community wasn't necessarily politically one that would automatically just adopt whatever was here. We wanted to look at really what did this specific community need and choose those different tasks with that community and make sure they can access it. And overall, it had a huge impact. And you'll see, this is a picture that I took right after one of our first public meetings in their outdoor town hall space that they have. And there's a playground right next to it. That was really awesome. And then this is on NYSERDA's featuring this year. So this picture was taken in 2020. And here it is, again, the same image, that small towns are having a huge role in New York State's climate energy transition. And while this small town in Columbia County started off as being really an unlikely player in this, they ended up being one of the featured players because they had such good participation. Even though it was a divided community, we worked together to earn a lot of points and complete a lot of those different program activities to bring positive change within that community. And here's the link. So if you want to read more, it's New Lebanon. They talk about Riverhead and one other community. And as part of this clean energy transition, and really having towns take on that leadership and role. But not every town, again, not every town can just do this in and of itself. And so in March 2021, the town of New Lebanon received their bronze certification, which is so awesome. And they were the first town in Columbia County to do so, and really the first one in the region. And this innovative approach showed that it was possible really for all municipalities to move the needle when it came to climate change through mitigation and adaptation. And again, I wanted to talk about one of the ways that we did that was through student partnership and having service learning projects, so that it took me having a course and having courses and creating opportunities within coursework and through internships to bring the capacity of the students to those towns. And then the students can be a critical resource for those town decision makers in bridging all the different interests within the towns. And so some of the projects we did is we built some student projects were building a climate roadmap for the town. They conducted a climate vulnerability assessment, assessing drought management options for the fire department. A really positive, popular one was identifying green jobs to expand the community so that people within that community can see, okay, this change, if we adopt these changes, it doesn't mean we're going to lose jobs and opportunities for people in our community, but actually investing in what kind of green jobs can come. And then energy, solar panels, and EV charging stations, and so much more. And so this has been a really positive and productive conversation, but it took the support of so many people. Like with that, I really want to commend my partners in New Lebanon, because their leadership has been so wonderful, and they've taken the time to invest in empowering the change that they wanted through student relationships. And these translate into action. So here's one of our partners, and this work has helped build essentially resilience to the imminent climate change that's happening. It's allowed the town to take advantage of funding opportunities, engage in community discussions about climate. And some of the really cool things that have done is there's a free store for clothing, a bicycle recycling program, a repair cafe, community composting, community solar, and so many different opportunities. And here's their certification. And what you can see here is a table at one of the farmers markets that they had, where it really allowed people to engage in a very comfortable setting, in ways that they can participate and take advantage of some of these programs. On the left is a table that I put in of all the different things. And one of the students maintained a CSC actions checklist so that we can track and see what are the different levers that we needed to press in order for them to become a bronze certified community and take advantage of all the different financial and other incentives to help this town take advantage of meeting some of the climate smart goals. Here are a couple pictures of the bike share program. There's not only trading bikes, but also taking advantage of some of the people in the community who can help repair bikes, which is really expensive. I'll say that having a bicycle is such a great opportunity, but they are very expensive. And people and kids, and I put kids in here because they grow and change. You have to keep replacing bikes. But if we want to take cars off the road and have people start to bike around in other ways, having a bike share program makes people who maybe wouldn't be able to either repair a bike or take advantage of buying a bike really participate in that. Another really empowering thing that's happened is having a free store, so people can go and buy garments and household goods and trade those things, and having a repair cafe, which you can see on the right, which is where people can sit out, bring things instead of throwing them away, and repair those within the community. They've also put in electric charging stations, and you could see here in the town hall replacing some of the light fixtures. And I know right now they're looking at even further improving their electric charging stations, so that if people are buying electric cars, which is something that we want people to buy electric cars, you really need to charge them. And so there's charging stations outside of the town hall. And so we've had some of these really high impact actions come out. And this is from NYSACC's website, that you can see some of the actions that have been completed. New Lebanon has composting and ways so that things aren't going just to trash, but where can I compost, and really learning, empowering people within that community. They may want to meet some climate goals, but without all of this support, they maybe wouldn't have had the capacity to do that.
Rebecca, I'm sorry to interrupt. It's my bad hat I have to put on, but I don't know if you can wrap it up in the next minute or two,
Sure.
just to try to stay on schedule.
One more minute, I'll just say,
yeah, great, thanks.
just to share, there's an article that's in the Journal of Security, Intelligence, and Resilience Education. And then in that, we kind of go through how we did that. So if this is something you want to do with your community, I just wanted to point out that this is there. And in it has a table of all the different projects we've had and how we've done that with impact. And with that, I will also just put out thinking about how this translates into action and my contact information. So if you want to reach out to me and have any questions, I'm really more than happy to engage with you. And again, want to thank both the conference organizers for having this and my community partners in New Lebanon, who are phenomenal to work with. Thank you so much. Sorry I went over on time.
That's okay. We can run over a little, but I just thank you for running through that, and apologies for having to cut you off. Just so we stay on, Holly, if you want to start getting ready with yours. Um, and Rebecca, I did cut you off and I apologize. Oh, okay, we're already ready with Holly's. Okay, we're good to go. Thanks. If I just want to put that in presentation mode. And I'm not hearing you.
Can you hear me?
Yes, now we can.
And
Thanks.
am I in presentation mode?
Yes, perfect.
Okay, very good. Hi, everybody. Good morning. I'm Holly Hutchinson. I'm the Finger Lakes Climate Fund Coordinator at Sustainable Finger Lakes. And you already heard from my boss, Gay, about two of the pilot projects that Sustainable Finger Lakes and the Climate Fund have going at the moment. I'm going to take you back to kind of the foundational program, which Gay started in 2010, which is the Climate Fund. And the pilot projects that Gay spoke about are grant funded. Gay designed the Climate Fund as a carbon offset fund. So it's a really fantastic model that I'm going to tell you a little bit about. If you're not familiar with carbon offsetting, I think probably everyone on the call is, but if you're not, it's a way for an individual or a business to take responsibility for some amount of their carbon CO2 emissions by making a donation that then goes to a program that reduces those emissions at an equivalent amount. So in our case, as Gay explained, we are focused on serving low to moderate income families with home energy upgrades that upgrade to high efficiency non-fossil fuel systems. So the one analogous concept is recycling, which we're all very familiar with. We would love to see offsetting as routine as recycling. And some of the, and I'm adjusting my screen because a lot of it's blocked. So excuse me for a moment. Some of the, the similarities are with offsetting, we're taking responsibility for our waste and we're following its path. And we're changing the idea that our waste just disappears. We used to think, oh, it just goes in the garbage truck when we're, with recycling, we just, I'll put it in the garbage truck, it's gone. Same with CO2. It's very easy to fly across the world and not think too much about its impact. So this is, taking responsibility, changing that perspective. And then, of course, it's always important, first and foremost, to reduce, to eliminate any unnecessary emissions, and then to offset the unavoidable ones. So in that sense, we would really like to see the mentality around offsetting be similar to what we've already kind of ingrained in ourselves with recycling. And I'm not forwarding, and I'm not sure why. Had this happen once before. There we go. People who have heard of carbon offsetting or considered it sometimes feel a little queasy about it because isn't it greenwashing? And it's possible that some programs out there are, but that is exactly why Gay created the fund. It is local, it is transparent, it's helping our friends and our neighbors and maybe ourselves. And it's supporting equitable access to home energy improvements in our region. Equity being a really important part of a climate fund, as well as the CLCPA, the Thicker Green New Deal. So at the state and local levels, equity needs to be built in so that there's access to this green energy future that we are talking about. It's also, the Climate Fund is also supporting the growth of the green economy in our region. We work with wonderful contractors, and the more business they get, the more they can hire and train and enlarge their teams so that we can do this important work. I think many of you may be familiar with the fact that in our state, 1/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions are coming from buildings, and that's why there's such a strong focus on upgrading buildings. So as Gay said earlier, in the Climate Fund, 88 families have received grants for their home upgrades in 13 counties of the Finger Lakes region. And approximately 9,000 tons of CO2 has been offset with the Climate Fund, and that is 18 million pounds of CO2. So I'm going to tell you about some of the folks that have received the grants, the awardees, and we call them climate heroes because they've made this change that benefits us all. And oftentimes it's not free to them. They're having to, make a financial contribution, but we try to compensate as much as possible with incentives and stacking them. But on the left here is Sarah. She lived with her 2 young daughters in a 1850s farmhouse using wood stove for heat. And she also had a childcare business in her home. And winters were particularly rough for them, and they had to shut off the second floor and huddle around the wood stove. And especially with the childcare business and having young children, that was not a viable option. So Sarah received a grant to, and all these folks, it would be upgrades to heat pumps or insulation always, and some received hot water heaters. Some I'll tell you a bit about one with the solar. So I'm not going to specify with each one what they received, but the story with Sarah is that her upgrade saved a whopping 294 tons of CO2 going into the atmosphere over the lifetime of the equipment that was upgraded. On the right is the Dandup family, and they had a really ancient furnace and water heater and drafty home, and children suffering from asthma because of that old furnace. And so with their upgrade, they were able to save 68 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere. On the left here is Cynthia and her parrot, Damien, her 22-year-old African gray parrot. And Cynthia has, as a senior, had some health issues. And as it turns out, consistent temperatures are important, not just for seniors with health issues, but for African gray parrots. And so also the air quality in her home was a challenge. So with her upgrade, Cynthia was able to save 69 tons of CO2 from the atmosphere, and get that consistent temperatures and air quality that she and also her visiting grandchildren needed. Her grandchildren, one of them has asthma. So on the right of Cynthia is Mohammed and his daughter Esra, and they are a Habitat for Humanity home builders. And in this case, Sustainable Finger Lakes was able to provide a grant to help them in paying for solar on their home that is now providing all the electricity for that home. And they were able to keep 20 tons of CO2 out of the atmosphere. So those are some of the folks. If you go to fingerlakesclimatefund.org, you can read the stories of all our awardees. So please do that when you get a chance. And I think I've pretty much gone over some of the benefits, the health, safety, comfort, long-term affordability benefits. And also, of course, most of the families we talk to are very excited about getting off of fossil fuels. They want to protect the climate. In this case, this is a Mizrahi family, and they kept 103 tons of CO2 out of the air with their upgrade, and cooling was their number one. And honestly, it's really everybody's favorite about heat pumps. So, again, as Gay said, having a cooling function, especially for seniors, but also for a variety of people as the climate warms is incredibly important. So if you're not familiar with the fund, this on the right is what our page looks like. Please go to fingerlakesclimatefund.org and it'll pop right up. This is the page you use to offset. You can see on that page, you just choose your mode of travel, air, car, or if you're offsetting your home energy usage. For travel, you put in your starting and ending location, you push calculate, and we will tell you how much carbon CO2 is emitted through your travel, and then what the donation would be, and you can make the donation immediately online. So as I mentioned, individuals and businesses, or sometimes teams of folks, are all our partners in this offset program. And often it is travel, but occasionally home or workplace usage. And Gay is a whiz at helping people figure out if our calculator can't help you, find the right amount for your emissions. Gay would be there to help. So I want to end with just showing one of our offset partners. This is Basil Sagos, our commissioner of the DEC in New York State. And in this case, Basil's been a regular offsetter, and we have many wonderful offset partners. I hadn't had time to go into showing all of them, but Basil is one example. In this case, he was traveling around the state for the hearings for the draft scoping plan for the CLCPA. And he, for the in-person ones, I think there were at least 8 or 9 of them that Basil attended, and then the rest were virtual. But anyway, so Basil offset that travel throughout the state. And I'm going to read what he said about the fund. The Finger Lakes Climate Fund's carbon offset program is helping to advance our ambitious climate goals and prioritizing environmental justice for all New Yorkers. I'm proud to work together, not just in New York State, but across the world, to achieve our collective goals to combat climate change. So I hope that if you're someone who's in the Finger Lakes region, but your area does not have a real active offset program right now, and we have not awarded funds, or not very many in your area, that you'll get in touch with me, and we can talk about supporting you and getting that started in your area. I'm ending with this slide. Colgate University is in Madison County, and they are one of our offset donors, and they recently funded 2 home upgrades in Hamilton, which is obviously where Colgate is located. So I think also, to highlight that offsetting is a really effective tool for just that first step in recognizing what our emissions are, and taking responsibility for them. So I would encourage everyone to share our calculator and just play around with it and see what your recent trips or your other emissions might be emitting into the atmosphere, and you might be surprised by how affordable it would be to offset. So I think we can answer any questions at the end here.
Thank you, Holly. And thanks to all the speakers, presenters. We have a few minutes for Q&A before we run overtime. So there's a few in the chat. Please raise your hand if you have additional questions. We can call on you. One was for me, going back. How many homes does it represent? The savings, gas reductions? I think it's roughly 65 homes so far that have gotten heat pump systems, mostly geothermal. It's based on the amount of gas being reduced by the equipment being taken out, not the equipment going in. So the incentives across all utilities across the whole state are based on the equipment going in. So you get an incentive for however much size of heat pump system going into the home. In this case, it's an additional incentive that's based on the amount of gas being reduced. So if you have a 100,000 BTU boiler coming out and maybe a water heater, those add up together and get replaced. So that's a chunk of gas that's being reduced, and that's how they do the calculation. Let me see if I can find other, while I scroll, sorry. Let's see other questions, but again, please feel free to raise your hands. Rebecca was asked to put her contact information in the chat. We have that. So if anyone wants it, it's there. And all of these will be saved. The chat will be saved. And let's see others. Yes, we have someone just commenting that the calculator is a great idea. Is the calculator proprietary, or could we adopt it for another community, Holly?
Gay, I'm going to let Gay answer that one because she's the expert.
Yeah, that we built that ourselves. It's a custom carbon calculator that we hired a local person to create for us, which I was really grateful to find the local talent, since every place I looked, they wanted $10,000, and that was 13 years ago for a carbon calculator. But certainly, as Holly said, anybody, sort of in the upstate area can partner with us to use our calculator and, run some offset campaigns in your particular home county. We're looking to do that with our across the region. So you can get in touch with, I see that it's just Holly at sustainablefingerlakes.org. In terms of Holly's contact information, there was a request for that. Yes, so yeah, just get in touch with us. It's not really something that is easily shared, the carbon calculator.
Right. Thank you, Gay. Another question for the two of you. Is Sustainable Tompkins, will you be working on any EV charging infrastructure at any point?
We don't have any funding for something like that at this point. It's I believe there are federal now grants out there that communities can pursue to help them get some structure going.
Great, thanks. A question and a response. So is this just for upstate? And Holly answered in the chat, Finger Lakes region, but happy to talk to all to strategize on how to set something like that up. Yeah, it could be anywhere. Any other questions, hands? Feel free to raise them. Feel free to, I can unmute you or unmute yourself.
There was a question from Greg for Rebecca about scaling.
Sorry, I missed that.
Oh, thank you, Gay. I missed that too. I see it now.
Okay.
So that's actually a really big challenge, because what we found is that it really does take a lot of like effort and work to get to know the community and really tailor all of these changes for a community. So I think scaling is a really hard thing without the capacity, and that's what we were trying to do, is create a model that can be replicable. But what we found is that every community is different, and it really takes some time to get in and know what of all of these really cool options that are available are the right match to invest in for that community. And so I wish it was an easily scalable thing, but the more we've gotten into it, the more we've realized that it really takes a lot of time and patience and listening. And I think one of the great outcomes on the student side, learning outcome, was that they're learning that policy change isn't something that you can do and just replicate over and over again, but really have to work with and listen to that community and let them be, and that community be the drivers of the change that they need within that. And like, if I looked at, I would never have guessed that the bike share and the free store would be something that would really have so taken off, but wow, is that impactful to people in their lives. And then once they were on board with that, then it became much easier to start to put in the charging stations and the solar and other components. But none of these things happen fast, especially with politically divided communities like this one, and getting them on board. So I wish I had a better answer that was easier, but we're happy to take the time to invest.
Great, thank you. There is a note in the chat as well that Cure 100, Communities United to Reduce Emissions, cure100.org, offers a carbon tracking system. So take a look at the chat, there's a link there. We're gonna go into the next session. And so Paul, if you wanna get your slides up and ready, we'll jump right into the next one, after which we'll have another chance for a Q&A. Thanks.
Unmute. All right. Good morning. Good morning, everybody. Thanks, Guillermo. Really delighted to be here, everyone, today with so many great colleagues around town and the university, and really honored to be asked to come and present. So thank you, Katie. Thank you, Simon. Thanks, Sarah and Susan. I'm going to share some comments this morning about clean hydrogen, which is getting a lot of press these days. And so I'm going to try to keep my comments short and leave room for Q&A. But I'm going to talk about it in two different aspects, both for energy, meaning electrical energy, power, as also for transportation. And I'll talk to you a little bit in general with an introduction, and then present some highlights of neighborhood scale activities in our region that are happening. Sometimes I like to give a subtitle to this talk, which is Back to Our Energy Future, using technology inspiration from the past. So I want to preface this with saying, especially in the context of this conversation, that I believe that technologies are only one portion of the tool set that we need to overcome the challenges in front of us and meet our climate goals. And in that context, I also believe that hydrogen is just one portion of the portfolio of tools that we need to get there. Okay, so let's dive in, and I'm going to give a brief introduction to what's happening with our energy system. Apologies to those of you that this is really old school and not at all telling, but hopefully there's some that this will help paint a picture for. Our electric grid is a really interesting system in that it is a just-in-time system. As you at our homes or in our businesses are turning on air conditioners or other really heavy pieces of equipment at the same time on a hot August afternoon, there is literally a signal that the utility is getting to turn up some generation either at the power station itself or at some other part of the power station to generate the electricity that those systems need. There are all kinds of different generators in our system today, base load that don't vary very much, and then non-spinning reserves that vary on a slow time scale, and spinning reserves that are really always turning up and down depending on people having their lights go on or air conditioners go on or their electric vehicles being plugged in. And so all of these are still very fossil-based technologies, and that's part of the problem that I want to introduce very briefly before getting into how hydrogen is one of the technologies that may be able to help. So we all envision a future that's much greener. In my perspective, I hope it to be more connected to our natural resources, like the sun and the wind and the water that generates hydropower. And we have the opportunity to do that, I believe. And yet it also introduces some interesting problems because of the way our electric grid is set up. So I'm going to walk through a small experiment here really briefly, which is taking a look at a graph through the time of day. And you can imagine this starting with midnight here and then ending at midnight the next day, and looking at a whole community, what its needs might be for power through the course of the day. It starts off at like a midpoint, and then as people start to wake up and get ready for school and work, people's power needs shoot up somewhat. People are turning on their stoves, they're turning on their lights, and then surprisingly to some, it starts to drop off as people get off to work. This is a historical chart when we weren't all working from home. I'm interested to see how this is updated for the current time. But a lot of the resources that we use at our workplaces are already kind of in the base load. And so this peak is because of people leaving the home. And then you see another peak later in the evening as people return back home and oftentimes tailing off into the evening. And depending on where you are in the world, this can be a long tail or a short tail. If we contrast that now to when solar power is available, of course, that follows a chart that looks like when the sun is the brightest at your area of location. And so here in upstate New York, it might be something like this, where most of the solar power we're going to be able to generate is right in the middle of the day. So many of you may have seen this chart already, and you see that there's a mismatch between when the solar power is available, and at least in this context, when the peaks of power are available by the community. And this is the origin of a so-called duck curve. So we don't have to get into the details of the duck curve right now, but it shows this mismatch between when power is available from solar and it's the middle of the day versus when it's needed. And so there's this potential for over-generating power, which actually the grid cannot accommodate. There's no place to store power in the grid. You can't just dump more solar into the wires and hope that you'll then be having it available later in the day. It doesn't work the same way as our water system does. There are no reservoirs. At least that was the case 10 years ago. We are starting to add energy storage capacity to our grid, which is needed in order to soak up that overcapacity in the middle of the day, and then have it available and shift it over to the evening times or even those morning times when those peaks in the graph of demand were so high. So batteries are a great technology for this. I'm going to argue that hydrogen is also a great technology solution for this, and I'll talk a little bit about why. The last part of data chart I want to share here is that you can see that for solar inputting to the grid, we have all this variability. And again, the peak of it is usually right in the middle of the day, which leads to that duck curve. Interestingly, there's also a lot of variability expected on the demand side. This is a simulation done by our partners at New York Best to show an 8-bay set of high-speed DC fast chargers that are being used at about about 50% utilization. And you can see this chart over the course of a 24-hour period is also very, very shaky, looking a lot like the solar output on a cloudy day, except this is on the demand side. So our grid is having both of these things happening at the same time. And at the same time, we're taking away the levers in terms of our fossil fuel peaker plants that we oftentimes use to take care of these wiggles that our grid doesn't like. And we can talk more about the details of that. So I'm not in favor at all of keeping natural gas peaker plants. Let me make that clear. I'm also not in favor at all of burning hydrogen to replace natural gas peaker plants. I think that's a terrible idea. There's a much more efficient way to do this, which offers just the same ability of levers, probably even better levers than peaker plants have, no matter what fuel you're burning in them. And it's a completely zero emission system based on electrolysis to generate hydrogen from water and electricity, and then replacing that electricity when needed by electrochemically converting that hydrogen back into electricity. So what the heck am I talking about? This is basically in a box that ETS, that energy transfer system, takes advantage of technologies that have been in development in our country for decades and are already commercially available, that we know how to deploy them to absorb solar and wind and hydropower when they are in surplus. These are very variable technologies that are designed to be variable. They generate hydrogen right on site. You keep that hydrogen stored as a gas, and now you have hydrogen available for any number of different opportunities that you need, whether EV charging or other grid services. You can deploy this into buildings as electricity or even as a heating fuel, or directly into hydrogen vehicles, which are coming online as heavy duty buses and tractor trailers. Our company is already working. This is now my company, so I've switched hats here, and I can talk about that in the Q&A if there are questions, but I'm wearing both Cornell hat and a standard hydrogen hat. With my standard hydrogen hat, I'm happy to tell you about a national grid project, which was fully approved by the New York State Public Service Commission to build one of these in our state. It'll be the first one like it in the country, and it has the potential to eliminate 6,400 metric tons of CO2 from our energy system every month that it operates. That's the equivalent to eliminating the same amount of pollution that an average US driver emits over a 100-year period. Our company has support from NYSACC, endorsements from the United States Department of Energy, as well as funding and some other associations here. Now, really exciting, I want to finish up just with a minute or two telling you what we're doing here locally. I'm really happy to be maybe one of the first to tell you about the Abrunia Energy Initiative, which is up at Cornell University. This is already a funded project, and it is implementing clean transportation for the campus community that we hope to also affect the greater Ithaca community going forward. A number of years ago, we had the chance to demonstrate fuel cell vehicles on campus. They were very exciting. Students and alumni and some folks from town got a chance to drive these around. What we're now doing is actually building a hydrogen refueling station on campus that will both allow these vehicles to become part of the campus fleet, as well as back up electric vehicle chargers and enable the electric vehicle chargers that we're adding to campus to be sourced by the solar and the hydro and the wind that come into the campus grid. So they're making that a completely renewable EV charging experience, as well as a resilient one. And so the site is coming along. This is really exciting for me to be able to see something go from a PowerPoint kind of illustration graphic into an architect's drawing of where this will go. And so I want to finish up by sharing that we're in discussions with TCAT and others to hopefully expand this into buses and have that be over into the community. And this is only one of 2 projects in our community. The other one I can't tell you about today, but hoping to announce shortly. You can ask me about the train later if there's time and questions and answers. This is part of my inspiration. My family and I are really fortunate enough to spend a lot of time in the Adirondacks. during the summer, and your impact on the environment is so strong when you're in the wilderness. And so I encourage everyone to think about our impacts every day. And the thing I'm going to finish up with is saying that I've been giving this talk for, well, a number of years now. The recent developments here in Ithaca are very new, but in just 8 years, our country, with the right vision and the right leadership, was able to get from the Earth to the moon. We weren't even circling in orbit yet, and 8 years later, we were landing people on the moon. So with all the dedication and direction and leadership that we have in this community, I'm super excited about where we're going in the next 8 years. Thank you so much.
All right, thank you. We're running a little behind, and Jeff, if you want to start loading up, I'll just say one thing about what you just presented. Thanks, Paul. TCAT, for those who aren't local, is the Tompkins Consolidated Area Transit, so they run all the buses locally. All right, thanks. Go ahead, Jeff. You're muted. I think you got back on mute somehow.
Okay, how's that?
Great, thanks.
Good. Awesome. My name is Jeff Goodmark. I am the director of micromobility for Center for Community Transportation. Center for Community Transportation is a not-for-profit based here in Ithaca with a bunch of missions, transportation related and sustainability related. Our job is to provide alternative transportation and to reduce overall vehicle miles traveled around our local community here. So we can start off with the big concepts, which is basically, what is micromobility? And so micromobility is a big word for a small idea. And the idea is that we use small vehicles for small trips, and we use large vehicles for large trips. And so micromobility can be broken down into a bunch of categories. And where I like to focus on, and what our business is currently, is in shared micromobility. And so the way that breaks down for us here locally is that we have Ithaca Bike Share, which is an e-bike service that is available to people to use at any time of the day or night. It's 24/7. It's 365. All you need to have is your phone, and you can go up to a vehicle without a reservation, unlock a bike, and take a trip anywhere within our service area, which includes essentially almost all of the city of Ithaca, town of Ithaca, and around there, including all the campuses and all the businesses. There are many benefits to shared micromobility. There's a ton of environmental benefits, as we are, again, reducing carbon emissions from vehicles. We are providing opportunities for people to be out and about, increase their personal health, their exercise benefits, and in general, by providing increased travel options for people around the county. And we can specifically offer this program in neighborhoods and in areas that don't have a lot of other travel options available. As a few people have already mentioned, cars are one of the biggest things that we're all trying to solve. And micromobility's concept is the unbundling of the car. And essentially, the way that we think about it is this: you go to buy a new car, you're standing in the lot with the car dealer, and all you can think about is that weekend once a year where you got to take your car and your whole entire family and your grandma and grandpa and all your cousins, and you got to go to the beach. And you think to yourself, you know what? I need a car that can fit all 8 of these people and all of our stuff and be able to drive off the road onto the sand and, all these awesome things. And so you buy that car and you have this great car. And essentially, for the other 363 days of the year, you're the only person in that car, and you're probably only driving it 10 or 15 minutes a day. And so the concept of unbundling the car is thinking about the bulk of the time that people are in cars and what they're actually doing with those cars and how they work. And so micromobility is really great at solving short trips for single people, which make up a large portion of trips in every city, but especially here in Ithaca, we find this to be the case. And the idea is, instead of splurging and buying this enormous car that you need once a year, you buy something small and practical that you're going to use to go back and forth from work, that's going to be energy efficient, potentially, hybrid or electric. And that's going to be a way that you can do it. And then on that weekend, when it comes up every year, you go out and you rent the biggest, baddest SUV you can get your hands on, and you put everyone that you know in it, and you put all your stuff in it, and you drive around to the beach, and you have your great family time. And so we realized that transportation solutions are many, and there is no silver bullet solution. Bikes, scooters, small vehicles are really great for less than 5 miles of distance. Small cars, using Ubers to get home, using ride-hailing services are excellent for medium distances. And, you know, there are certainly opportunities and times when you do need to have a car to carry stuff around or to move your whole family around. And those are the opportunities as well, but those are not the daily opportunities.
Discussion. Please just click X on your keyboard. Thank you.
So a few people mentioned about local impact, and, you know, bike share works really great because it has a large impact on all of the cities that we work in. And here in Ithaca alone, already in less than 1 year of operations, we have created 50,000 trips. Actually, by this morning, it's closer to 55,000 trips. 32,000 people roughly live in Ithaca, and that averages to almost 1.6 trips for every person who lives in the city. And it's really amazing when you think about it on that scale, how successful this program has been and what the need for this program is. And the whole time that we've been operating this program, the demand has been way above our supply of vehicles. For most of the year, we've only had about 85 vehicles out in town. And we were creating around 300 trips a day with those vehicles, which means that these bikes were all getting ridden, you know, on average more than 3 times a day. In the last 6 weeks, we've just been as busy as we've ever been. More than 12,000 rides. It's actually, I made these slides a few days ago, and so it's more like 15,000 rides. It's really, really been popular. Micromobility has got a lot of really interesting use cases. Locally here, I've been trying to work with both Ithaca College and Cornell University to try to adopt plans on campus where potentially university would buy into this program and this idea of shared micromobility, where they could potentially offer the service to their students and to their staff at low or no rate at all, you know, and pay for our service, you know, directly, which would be kind of an awesome way to do it. We've had 600 new users in the last 3 weeks. We've had more than 2,000 rides. Actually, it's 4,000 rides since June 1st. These slides are a little slightly outdated because we do so much every single day. I have over 7,000 registered users now. And we see about 20% of those users are from Cornell, or at least use their Cornell ID. We estimate that it's probably closer to 40 or 50% of our daily users that are students in town. When you start to think about where people are going and what they're doing, you can look at maps that are all real nice and interesting. Here's a green are starting, where trips all start. Red is where trips all end. You pretty much see that we cover all of the local area here. So Green New Deal is something Ithaca has been involved with now for a bunch of years, probably almost been 5 years since this concept has started. It's really focused on building, electrification of buildings, and there really wasn't a very large part of the goals that they've listed that were transportation related. In fact, goal 3 is only reducing emissions from city vehicles by 50%. That's a very attainable and not a very lofty goal, in my opinion. We need to do a lot better than that. And micromobility plays a huge part in providing alternative transportation for people. It's a huge survey that went out, a couple 100,000 people that were involved in this program, and they've recently been able to come up with 37% of shared micromobility trips are car replacements. Now, that's an amazing number, and I really hope that that's true everywhere. We have been using around 25% as our average for what we think that we're doing. And so if we apply that to Ithaca, New York, and the trips that we've done, we've saved roughly 16,000 car trips locally here since 2022 in November when we launched. And that's a really, really impactful, large amount. And that's doing it, like I said, without a large enough fleet and with demand being way ahead of our supply. And we can only imagine how successful we could be and how many trips we really could do if we had enough vehicles to meet that demand. Another very interesting fact about micromobility and bike share is that a lot of people have reported that almost 6% of our trips are new trips. And by that, I mean, these are people who would have probably stayed home and done nothing at all. And we're getting them out, and we're getting them out into the community. We're getting them out on bikes. We're getting them out doing their thing, whatever that is for the day, which is really kind of awesome.
Sorry, Jeff, to jump in here. I don't know if you can wrap it up in a minute or so. Thanks.
Sure. So there's lots of different ways to measure the impact of micromobility and what it has on local communities. And we believe that we're doing a really, really amazing job here, providing these e-bikes and providing them at around 350 to 400 trips a day right now. And we'll leave it right there.
Terrific. Thank you. And I'm sorry to interrupt. It's really challenging to stick to 10 minutes, I know. And we're just a little over for each one. So Peter, if you want to get yours up and ready to go, and we'll transition to the next one. Peter Bardaglio up next. But yeah, thank you, Jeff.
Can you see that?
Not yet.
So I have to share my screen, right?
Yes.
Okay, there.
There we go. Perfect. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Guillermo. Very glad to be here this morning with so many friends and colleagues. And thanks to the organizers for doing such a terrific job. A lot of moving pieces that they've managed to put in place. So thanks to them as well. So I'm the executive director of the Ithaca 2030 district, which we see as a new model for urban sustainability. There, okay. So the Ithaca 2030 district flagship program of Tompkins County is the flagship program of Tompkins County Climate Protection Initiative. We founded TICB back in 2008 and really saw that we needed to figure out a way to reach out to the business community and to strengthen our relationship with them. We also were interested in trying to create a culture of collecting building performance data and benchmarking. So we established the 2030 district in 2016. It was the first in New York State, and we were funded by a NYSACC planning grant, for which we were very grateful. Members of the 2030 district include building owners, community organizations, government agencies, and various professionals in the building and real estate sector. So, as I said, TICB's primary vehicle for engaging the business community is the 2030 district, focusing on reducing greenhouse gas emissions. So what are the key characteristics of 2030 districts? Well, the main goal is to improve energy and water performance of commercial and mixed-use buildings, and also to try to reduce transportation emissions. The whole idea behind the 2030 district is that it's private sector led with voluntary collaboration. So we're really trying to build the business case for sustainability in downtown Ithaca. And we collect, benchmark, and analyze data to track progress of the various buildings that are members. As you can see here, we're part of a 24 district network that includes cities across the United States and in Canada. If you look through these cities, you'll see that Ithaca is the smallest city by far to be a participant in the network. The next smallest one going up the ladder is Burlington, Vermont, and they're quite a bit bigger than we are. So we kind of operate in a different solar system almost, even though we're part of this network. The other districts are talking about having like millions of square feet because they're so large. Oh boy. There we go. So what are the targets for the 2030 district in terms of performance? Well, for new construction, the goal is to be have all new construction be carbon neutral by 2030, and for water use and carbon emissions from transportation to be reduced by 50%. When it comes to existing buildings, the idea is to get energy use, water use, and carbon dioxide reduced by 50% below the baseline by 2030. So what do we do in the 2030 district? Well, one, we provide owners with individual performance dashboards to track the progress of their buildings. We collect monthly energy data through the NYSACC portal with the permission of each of the building owners, the written permission. And we get the quarterly water data from City Hall. We also hold quarterly meetings with the district partners to share ideas and challenges and different ways in which folks are making progress and introducing ideas for new technologies that might be helpful. We publish an e-newsletter 4 times a year, and probably the biggest thing we do is compile an annual progress report on the performance of the district as a whole. Here's a sample of one of the performance dashboards. This is the one for Whole Architects. Again, we have their written permission to share this with the public. You can see this is just the energy piece of the dashboard. There's also a water piece. You can see we provide them with a lot of information about how their building is doing. The drop-down menus over on the left allow you to really focus in on the parts of the data that you're really interested in. So it's very interactive, and each building owner gets a link to the dashboard that's confidential and that they can use whenever they want to. We have a very, I think, strong advisory board. Very fortunate to have these folks on the board, including Guillermo. As you can see, we have a range across the community from both the county and the city. And these folks work to keep me on track and to make sure we're moving forward in the way that we need to, and I can use them all the time as a sounding board for questions or challenges that I'm having. This is what the district looks like. Those are the boundaries of the district. It looks a little gerrymandered, but in fact, that's where 90% of the buildings, commercial buildings in Ithaca are. So that's why we drew the boundary the way we did. There's a cutaway down at the bottom that focuses on the commons, which is really a center for a lot of our buildings. And we've really focused on trying to get those buildings on the commons and around the commons to join the district. What about total numbers? Well, right now we have 604,000 square feet committed to the district. We just hit the 600,000 mark very recently with the addition of 2 new buildings, the Southside Community Center and the building on the commons where the Mia restaurant is. We have a total of 46 buildings at this point and 31 property members. Here's the latest progress report that we issued in this late spring about the 2022 data. During that year, the district reduced its energy consumption by 27% from the district baseline in 2022. In addition, we used 40% less water than the baseline last year. So you can see we're making progress toward significant progress getting towards a 2030 target, 50%. We had a slight improvement in commuter emissions, 16% reduction for 2021, and significantly below the 2019 emissions level. But we still have a long ways to go to get to the 2030 target there. That's really by far the hardest nut for us to crack. We've grown pretty rapidly. We've had a 45% increase in committed square footage since the end of 2021. Here's one of the charts that we share with the members. As you can see, the data is all anonymized, but here you can see where folks have met or exceeded the 2030 target. And here you can see where the folks who met or exceeded the 2020 target. And these are the folks that we need to work with. But the goal of the 2030 district is to hit the 2030 targets as a district. So not, we focus on helping the individual buildings meet their targets, but overall, what we're interested in is the performance of the district as a whole. In 2022, we had 13 out of 40 committed buildings that met the 2030 target of reducing energy consumption by 50% from baseline. So those are the stars of the district, those 13 buildings. And as already been mentioned, the Ithaca Green New Deal has really provided us with a strong framework for all of this. And the city is officially committed to achieving community-wide carbon neutrality by 2030. The latest greenhouse gas inventory that Rebecca Evans conducted as the city sustainability director shows that buildings make up an estimated 58% of emissions in Ithaca. And of that 58%, the commercial sector contributes 38%. And so you can see that, we really need to work with the commercial buildings in Ithaca and try to make sure that we reduce their carbon footprint during this period of time. Energy efficiency and electrification in the built environment is clearly the key to achieving carbon neutrality for the city. And we feel like the 2030 district's focus on improving the performance of commercial buildings can clearly help accelerate the reduction of our community's carbon footprint. And that's all I've got for you. There's my contact information. Happy to provide anybody who's interested in starting a 2030 district in their community with the details on how we did it. We have lots of documentation that I think could be very helpful.
Thank you, Peter. I was just about to ask you to wrap up, so sorry to be the bad guy here, but thanks everyone for trying to stay as little overtime as possible. So Ethan, if you want to get yours up and ready. Again, thanks everyone for your patience and for the presenters. We'll try to have a few minutes for Q&A at the end still. There you go. Thanks. Looks like.
All right, is this working?
We're still seeing presentation or presenter mode.
Okay, it says I'm screen sharing.
You are screen sharing, but we're seeing your full slide deck.
Oh, that's fine, because I'm about to hit slideshow on it.
Good. Okay.
Okay, perfect. Hey, thanks. Good afternoon, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here. Thanks, everyone who is involved in programming. I know I'm also looking forward to seeing folks in person at the happy hour this afternoon. My name is Ethan Bodnarick. I'm the Ithaca area program manager for Block Power. Block Power is a climate tech company. We focus on weatherization, building electrification, and workforce development. I'll be sharing with you all about how our agile approach here in Ithaca is enabling new projects and climate progress that wouldn't be happening otherwise. So first, and other folks have heard about it in other presentations, a brief background and history on the context here in Ithaca. So in June 2019, the city of Ithaca adopted the Green New Deal. Just one part of that is Electrify Ithaca, which aims to weatherize and electrify all 6,000 buildings in the city of Ithaca by 2030. Block Power was chosen to be the program manager for this. And so 3 years after the original resolution was signed, Block Power kicked this off in July 2022 to launch this program. Back then, we had a community organizer in the area who built local relationships and started a community advisory board. And then in March 2023, I joined as a program manager right here, boots on the ground, and my colleague Jaden Beck in April. So let's jump right into it. So we all want to see more progress on climate, on electrification. So what's needed is an agile program management approach where we seek out niches and gaps and opportunities out there. So in this very brief 10 minutes, and I know Guillermo's going to hold me to it, I'll share how our agility is driving new momentum in Ithaca by finding and filling these niches and gaps that otherwise would prevent projects from taking place or being able to move forward once costs come up, right? So this is a photo from our first project at Gimme Coffee. Major barriers for these sorts of electrification programs still include cost and also the effort for building owners to navigate the very complex ecosystem of contractors and incentives out there. So our agility in action, partway into 2023, our local utility NYSACC unveiled a very generous pilot heat pump incentive program. It funds up to $200,000 towards the difference in cost of compared to a heat pump system compared to what it would cost to replace it with a fossil fuel system. So this program applies for areas with identified natural gas supply constraints, and all of the Ithaca area is eligible. So the rub was that this new pilot has very distinct, complicated procedures and requirements compared to existing incentives contractors were used to. So that led to this program being vastly underutilized, despite the large amounts of money that it could provide. So immediately, Block Power, we identified this as a niche and jumped right into it. So, you know, just weeks after the launch of this program in March, we submitted one application for it for the Gimme Coffee project. The next month in April, we had submitted 6 applications and completed the first project in Ithaca, which was Gimme Coffee. And jump to this month, this incentive program is expiring in a month. So 4 weeks to go before the program ends, we submitted another 10 applications for this and expect to get in at least 7 more before the program ends. So really interestingly, in speaking to our niche here, Block Power is one of only 3 organizations or contractors that have even taken advantage of this. And then one of those 2 was a contractor we worked with on several projects. And because they worked with us on it, they were able to do one of their own. So really, Block Power brought the vast, vast majority of use of this program into play. And so what this really does is it's enabled projects, heat pump conversions for small businesses, nonprofits, houses of worship, and, you know, even buildings where ideologically they want to convert to heat pumps, but they might have newer gas systems. And it's just really hard to make that, to come up with the money for something like that when the need isn't strong. And so this incentive really helps. So this incentive has covered up to 90% of project costs for some of our projects, and the 17 that we have already submitted represents $2.2 million in financing or in and direct rebates, free money brought to these. So another couple of examples of our agility in action. So Block Power has significant business development and lead generation capabilities for projects in the single family home area. We have a very robust project intake website in cooperation with the city of Ithaca, and some tools to provide a very kind of initial estimate of project costs before we even get on site. So taking advantage of this, we developed a referral program for single family homes. As you know, a lot of contractor leads, their site visits, you know, maybe only 25% or less of them convert to projects. So with our capabilities to spend time with customers, to generate new leads, we can develop leads that have a much higher percentage of conversion to projects. And so just in August, we signed a couple of these referral agreements with two of our partner contractors. And you know, this referral doesn't add any additional cost to customers, because this saves, you know, driving high quality leads to contractors saves them time, money of avoided sales site visits, marketing, outreach, etc. So with this kind of new development, we have 4 projects in the pipeline for that. And then in addition, we have with our community outreach, we're starting to work with volunteers at Cornell to go door to door, just to raise awareness about this program, drive more leads, and develop high quality leads to add to this referral program. And then on top of that, we have another example where Block Power has financing for basically for multifamily and commercial projects. And we, working with our contractors, we are enabling some of their projects by offering our financing through these contractors for projects that we didn't originate. So sometimes other contractors, they have these churches, they have these small businesses, they have these nonprofits that want to do projects, and then they get to that final number and they don't have the cash for it. So this is really taking advantage of the tools we have, the staff, and our ability rooted in the community to utilize volunteers for education, for simplifying the process for homeowners and the such. A final example of another gap we're filling is just this month, we were approached by a small business in downtown Ithaca with over $100,000 in weatherization, heat pump, and renovation costs related to their historic nature of their building. And so it turns out that 10% of buildings in the city of Ithaca qualify for the federal and state historic tax credit program, which will fund up to 50% of renovation costs that include weatherization and heat pumps. So this is another of those kind of complicated programs that contractors just don't have experience and the capability to manage and pursue. And so we're developing this kind of process, and we're lucky to have partners with Historic Ithaca who are excited to kind of help with this as well. So again, these can cover up to 50% of costs, including, you know, consulting for the tax credits themselves. So kind of as a recap, as program managers of the Electrify Ithaca program, you know, our job is really to innovate, to push forward, to be agile. I like to say we're kind of organizing the overall marketplace, or the customer contractor incentive ecosystem, which is very complicated. We're bringing full incentives to bear that are often underutilized, and some of the other kind of energy efficiency rebate programs we're working to develop. You know, we talk to their program managers, and they find it shocking in a way that it's hard to actually give out funds. There's so many programs out there and so many different companies managing them all. You know, there's real niches and gaps out there for block power to be filling. So, you know, overall, I just want to leave you all with just that idea of that's how we're approaching this program management. We're enabling climate progress that wouldn't be happening otherwise. And just know that myself and Jaden are located right here in downtown Ithaca, and we're very agile, adaptive, and responsive. So if you have questions, if you have projects, please reach out to us. And we're excited to be here and to be doing this work. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Ethan. Thanks, everyone else, presenters and participants. It is now 12:20, so we've run through the Q&A period, but we have a break till 12:30.
Okay, it's 1:40, and we'll start the session. I'm substituting for the moderator, so I am totally unprepared for this position. But I understand our speakers are well-versed in the subject. The subject, of course, is meeting climate goals. So if you're in the right, this is the right place to be. And I'll introduce Sarah Carson as our first speaker. And I think you probably should give a few words on who you are before you start your talk. And again, if I apologize, I don't have the your slides, so if you'll have to do this yourself. Okay, thank you.
Can do. Hey everyone, I'm Sarah Carson. I'm director of Cornell's Campus Sustainability Office, and our team helps to lead not only the campus energy transition and our drive towards carbon neutrality, but a broad range of sustainability programs, both operationally and we work on engagement and education of staff, faculty, and students for sustainability and climate literacy as well. But I only have 10 minutes to talk to you about a really big topic, which is the campus energy transition. So I'm going to dive right into that. Let's see, have I successfully shared the slides?
Yes, you have.
Great, thanks. Okay. So this is work that's been decades in the making. And again, I only have 10 minutes, so I'm going to zoom through a couple of things here. Important to note that our goal is to be carbon neutral on the Ithaca campus by 2035. And we're we're going to do that with 100% renewable energy. All right, first, just a little bit of context about our campus and our campus energy systems. So we are 15 million gross square feet connected to district energy systems. And just to make sure that that makes sense to folks, what that means is that we generate heat, power, and cooling for campus buildings in a central facility, and then distribute it around to all of those buildings through miles and miles of underground pipes and wires. So here's a little closer look at our central energy plant facilities, where we generate 35 megawatts of peak power. Fun fact, that's 1/1000th of the state of New York's electric demand, as well as 90 megawatts thermal peaking of steam and cooling to heat and cool the buildings around campus. But here's another view of campus. 35,000 people. We confer about 8,000 degrees every year. Any person, any study is our famous motto. So huge variety of life-changing research and done in a way that we hope is true to our land grant mission, things that we can scale out and distribute not only on our campus and our community and state, but really add to the global solution set. But here's another view of our campus. This image is a visual representation of the volume of greenhouse gas emissions associated with each building's operation. So if you look at the emissions factors associated with the heat, cooling, and power used in each building, and then convert that volumetrically, that's what it looks like. So for example, the synchrotron particle accelerator, which is an important piece contributing to the global knowledge set and high energy particle physics. That's 12% of our annual campus power use. Our labs are very energy intensive. We have thousands of them, and each fume hood uses about as much power as 300 or 400 homes on an annual basis. But what that means is this is a great place to develop and demonstrate solutions. And that's the ethos we try to bring to this work. So we're not only interested in driving our own campus emissions to zero, definitely interested in that, don't get me wrong, but can we do it in a way that both leverages and helps to inform our academic missions? How can we leverage the expertise of our people, the unique characteristics of our campus systems to create things that can scale beyond our own campus as effective solutions? So another framing that we have approached this with is this hierarchy. So we first look to avoid carbon intensive activities. Can we change how we're doing things? We then look to reduce the energy demand or the, increase the efficiency of the activities that we're doing. And then we seek to replace fossil fuels with low or no carbon solutions. And only then do we start to thinking about offsetting through carbon sinks or sequestration processes on the lands that we manage as a campus, or other emission-related activities in our community. And I put the word offset in quotes just to call attention to the fact that we do not intend to buy third-party offsets. We really want to change what we're doing on our own campus. All right, a little bit about how we're doing so far. We set our goal to be carbon neutral in 2007, but we've been working on this since the 90s. This chart goes back to the year 2000. Let me see if I can get a little pointer going here. There we go, back to the year 2000. And what this is showing is that the emissions associated with that district energy system have dropped by about half in the last 2 decades. And even more than that, if you consider what they would have been had we not taken action. So things like our lake source cooling project, converting to combined heat and power, upgrading to LED lights, that was a 4% savings in annual campus power use, believe it or not. Increasing our renewable energy and then through it all, energy conservation, both in our physical buildings and working with our campus population to change their behaviors to be more energy efficient. And that's all overlaid or underlaid, I guess, the way I have this slide set up with some external public drivers, both international, national, and more recently, some compliance drivers. So our local Ithaca Green New Deal and Energy Code Supplement, our New York State climate law, and supported by the Federal Inflation Reduction Act and funding that's coming from there. So these things are all coming together mostly in good ways, but we do have some interesting situations where we've been working one path for a long time. You know, the Ithaca Energy Code requires something else. The state policy is trying to get at the same thing, but in a different way. And so sometimes these create kind of a no-go zone of, well, the one line wants us to do this, but this one says we have to do it this way. So some of the work that we're doing is obviously just trying to collaborate and work together to harmonize all of these different right ways of doing things towards the same goals. Okay, a little bit more about what we've done so far, and then I'll dive into how we're going to get the rest of the way there. So energy conservation, I think everyone's favorite saying is the most efficient building is the one you don't build, and the most efficient energy is the energy you don't use, or something along those lines. So again, this chart goes back to the year 2000, and what it's showing us is that our campus has grown in square footage. This black line shows that that has grown almost 20% in the last 20 years, believe it or not. Our campus energy use, so heat, cooling, and power, has actually dropped a little bit. And that's one of the framing assumptions of our climate action plan, is that we can keep energy use flat, even though we keep adding space to the campus. And so far, we've been able to do that. Lake source cooling. So this has allowed us to cool the campus with 85% less electricity than conventional chillers and no refrigerants. I think most people know that refrigerants are the most potent greenhouse gas. So it uses in a very passive way the cold water that's in Cayuga Lake, a non-contact heat exchanger, and then we have a separate cold water loop up to campus. So just lake water comes out and goes right back into the lake, and we just take the cold from that water back up to the campus. The combined heat and power facility has allowed us to shift from burning coal to burning natural gas. Not a solution, to be clear. We're working really hard now to move beyond that to a fossil fuel-free solution. But what it did allow us to do is shift from burning coal to heat the campus and then buying power from the grid separately to power the campus. And that was a huge increase in energy efficiency. So we can burn gas like they do in a grid power generating plant to create electricity. But what we do on campus that they can't do out on the grid is to take that hot exhaust, put it through a whole bunch more efficiency technology apparatus to squeeze out every last bit of energy, and then heat the campus with that waste heat. So we've gone to a 70% efficiency rating from what would otherwise have been about a 40% efficiency rating. So an overall reduction in the amount of fuel it takes to heat and power the campus. But again, not a solution. We need to move beyond natural gas for sure, as fast as possible. And then on the electricity side, we've installed about 28 megawatts AC on Cornell properties, rooftops, and surrounding ground mount systems. And in combination with our hydroelectric plant on campus, that generates about 22% of our annual electricity use. But on sunny afternoons like today, we're actually 100% renewable in any given moment. Okay, so how are we going to get the rest of the way to carbon neutrality for our energy systems? So in 2008, when we started tracking our baseline metric, we were emitting about 260,000 metric tons annually. We've cut that in half already, but how are we going to get the rest of the way there? So right now we have a little bit from grid electricity, and as I was saying, most of it comes from burning gas in our combined heat and power plant at the moment. To get rid of that, we're going to continue to ensure that we have high performance buildings, so more energy conservation in our existing building stock, and making sure that new buildings are built to high efficiency, and that helps to offset growth. We're going to convert our steam heat distribution system to hot water. That's way more efficient. We just lose less heat to the environment because it's cooler. It's also safer and is needed to enable any carbon-free heat solution. So then there's the carbon-free heat solution, both baseload heat and peaking, which may end up being a separate technology, as well as carbon-free electricity. Okay. Quickly, a little bit more about each of those. And then I know I need to pass the mic to Wayne. So carbon-free electricity, we actually have this one in our sites. On paper, we have agreements to build out that remaining electricity that we need through regional solar farms. We already have a number of distributed energy resources in place, as I've talked about, with a couple more smaller things possible. We're excited about the potential for an agrivoltaics research platform on campus and potentially some more rooftop solar. We've pretty much built out what makes sense for us to do under the current state policy structure on the distributed scale. A little more about steam to hot water conversion. The East Campus is already underway. That should be done in the next year or two. All of our new buildings and systems, when we go in to replace utilities, are converted now to hot water. But we do have a lot of work left to do there in terms of converting our building systems, but most of which are designed for steam. So we have a master planning process underway to enable us to do that efficiently. And that source of renewable carbon-free heat, earth source heat. And the next speaker is going to talk to you in detail about that. So I'm just going to skip over this quickly. But essentially, it mirrors the lake source cooling project in some ways, where it draws from the heat deep underground. Then we have a non-contact heat exchanger at the surface and a separate loop of water that will circulate around to directly heat the campus buildings. consideration that we have, and a number of others probably who are thinking about transitioning their campuses and assets to beneficial electric solutions for heating and transportation and cooling, even in some cases, is what about electric reliability and how that how what we're doing on our own campus fits in with what's happening in the state and the state goals. We know that there are some concerns about reliability needs, particularly with intermittent renewables. But to a campus like ours, that points to the need for more research and development, and just the need to make sure that what we're doing is as efficient as possible. And that's one of the really wonderful things about the Earth Source Heat Project that Wayne, the next speaker, is going to talk to you about. This chart is a little bit complicated in terms of what's going on here, but it basically says if we look at other options besides Earth Source Heat, which is the gray bar in each of these cases, ground source heat pumps or air source heat pumps with which you might be more familiar, Earth Source Heat uses much less electricity. And that has big implications for what's going on in the rest of the state, right? We're already 1/1000th of the state's electric use. So if we were to heat our campus with air source heat pumps or ground source heat pumps, and think about using wind, or batteries to provide the electricity for those solutions in a reliable way, right? Where we don't need to worry about these days where we're not quite sure where all of the power for the grid is going to come from. Those would be significantly more expensive. These numbers on the left represent both megawatt hours and dollars when you combine these. And these are showing that the actual power generation plus the storage needed to ensure reliability is substantially less when we're looking at Earth Source Heat, which, as Wayne will explain to you, is a really, really cool way of generating heat without using a lot of electricity.
Sarah, I'm going to have to cut you off. We're a little bit over.
That's great, because I'm done.
With you? All right, I appreciate it.
Passing it to you, Wayne.
Okay, Wayne, please, it's all yours.
Okay, hi everybody. Let me get a presentation running here. Can you guys see that?
Not yet. There it is.
Yep, got it.
Okay, so as Sarah mentioned, my name is, I'm going to talk about Earth Source Heat, and my name is Wayne Besner-Kerr, and I'm the Earth Source Heat Program Manager here at Cornell University. And as Sarah was explaining, Earth Source Heat is an exciting component of how Cornell is going to position itself to meet its carbon neutrality obligations. And it's an intriguing technology, and it's something we're really, really excited about, but I don't want to let my enthusiasm for the project overstate the confidence, because what Cornell is trying to do is going to be a first of its kind globally. And there's a lot of challenges still ahead of us. So this slide is a version of the information that Sarah shared with you. And it confirms the same thing. It shows that by changing technology, first of all, from the combustion of coal to the combustion of natural gas in a combined heat and power plant, the total greenhouse gas emissions, at least in terms of carbon dioxide emissions, that have been released by heating Cornell's campus have decreased steadily, while the total square footage on campus continues to increase. The challenge that we're facing is that although efficiencies have been really significant and laudable, they still result in a very large amount of greenhouse gas emissions compared to the goal of zero or a carbon neutral campus. And this slide here shows the percentage of the New York energy grid that is derived from renewable sources. And what you see is that the total renewable fraction of electricity in New York is small. It's less than a third. It's a little bit more than a quarter. Now, under new legislation, we expect this fraction of the total electrical supply to increase, but there's a huge gap between what's available today and what would be required to support some of the technologies that Sarah was talking about as possible low carbon solutions. So this is the same graph that Sarah was discussing. And the large area that shows a zero carbon firm capacity needed refers to a future scenario in which the New York State grid is built out to be a fully renewable and zero emission grid. So a combination of technologies, including wind power, solar power, offshore generation, storage, etc. But this is a week of challenging weather in midwinter. So our demand is high. The conditions that make renewable generation easy, like high wind and high sun, are absent. And the large area marked zero carbon firm capacity is the place where we have big questions. Where will this power come from? Where will the power required to support a transition low carbon New York State come from? One of the ways that Cornell wants to meet our part of the solution to that question is by reducing the total amount of electricity that we're going to require. So even though we anticipate a future electric grid will have a much larger fraction of renewable or zero emission power, that power is going to be required for projects all the way across the state, all sorts of housing, all sorts of industry, education, all sorts of requirements. And if places like Cornell are pushing the easy button and switching over, for example, to air source heat pumps or even more efficient ground source heat pumps, our total electrical demand still goes up. It increases significantly over the current electric demand of the university campus. And that is going to be requiring power that doesn't currently exist. So we're trying to find a technology that allows us to reduce our electrical demand. And this is one of them. This is what we call earth source heat. And what earth source heat is it's a really sort of primary form of geothermal power. When we talk about geothermal in our communities here in upstate New York, or all over the state, we're generally talking about using a heat pump to move heat back and forth between our house or our buildings and the shallow subsurface, something like 500 feet below the surface. And that pumping requires compressors. Compressors require refrigerants. That's an electrically intensive operation, and it involves some chemicals that we don't want manufactured and released into the environment. Earth source heat is very different because we intend to go very, very deep. We're currently about 10,000 feet below the surface, and our goal is to harvest heat, extract heat by collecting fluids, collecting water, and bringing that heat up to the surface and essentially passing it on to the district heating system that Sarah described in her presentation. A fully integrated low carbon vision for Cornell would have renewable power feeding into it. And we see that on the left side of this diagram with solar panels and wind farms. It is supplemented by hydropower, which Cornell has had on campus for over 100 years and continues to invest in and rely on. It provides cooling from lake source cooling, which is in the top 10 most efficient cooling systems in the world. It continues to be a globally recognized, environmentally friendly solution to the challenge of district cooling. And then we intend to use heat from earth source heat to provide the hot side of that district energy system. So how do you do it? How do you do earth source heat? Well, the uncomfortable truth is you have to go to the oil and gas and the mining industry to find the expertise, the personnel, the knowledge, and the tools to do the job. So our experimental borehole was drilled by hiring firms that are normally in the business of drilling gas and oil wells. And those people are the people that we talk about when we talk about a just transition in the future. These are the workers who have historically had well-paid jobs producing a product that has so many significant environmental consequences for us. And the question comes up all the time, what will these people do when oil and gas is no longer available as an industry? What we're hoping is that they're going to do this. They're going to be involved in geothermal exploration. The scale of the operation can't be overstated. This is a picture from our drill rig when it was working on site. It's a very, very labor intensive, very knowledge intensive operation. And it's an industry that doesn't exist really in New York, but we hope it exists in the future. So this is just a simple diagram that shows the complexity of what's involved. To explore the potential for earth source heat, we drilled to almost 9,800 feet below the surface. The vertical column with the colors in it shows all the different geological formations. So essentially all the different types of rock that were passed through on our way down to the bottom of the well. Each of those presents different challenges, potentially different opportunities as well. But to make it work in New York, we have to get down to the bottom to get hot enough. People ask us all the time, how hot is hot enough? This is a temperature graph that shows the increase in temperature with depth. The temperatures indicated here are lower than they are in the actual well today because these temperatures were recorded just after the well was drilled and it hadn't heated up yet to its current temperature. It's about 185 Fahrenheit at the bottom of the well. And when Sarah talked about steam to hot water conversion, what that process is doing is it's making a system that used to work on 300 degrees steam, make it very, very comfortable operating with 180 degree water. So we have the potential to tie this system producing water at this temperature directly into the increasingly efficient district energy system converted for what we call low temperature hot water. And this is what it would look like as a fully integrated system. We show on the bottom left lake source cooling providing a cold loop to the campus. On the right, earth source heat providing a hot loop to the campus. We have a connection to the power grid where it's required. We have hydroelectric power going in. We have solar power going in. We have biomass going in to provide the answer to those really, really, really cold days in February where we don't really expect earth source heat to meet all of our needs. So this picture represents sort of three stages of the energy transition at Cornell. We have coal on the left, combined heat and power burning natural gas in the middle, and a carbon neutral renewable future on the right. That's it for me. Any questions, Simon?
Guillermo, are you there?
I am. My apologies. I
Take
did not.
over, please.
Yes, I don't have the chat because I joined so late. I didn't realize we were on that I was on again for this afternoon. So my apologies for that. I thought I was done in the morning. And I couldn't actually attend most of this session. So I don't see any of the chat. I can take over in terms of any hands that are raised. I can try to check on questions that way. If anyone has a question, go ahead and raise your virtual hand. I see Allison Churchin.
Allison is actually in, so she should be, if she hasn't spoken yet, she's on.
I see her hand raised as well, so she might have a question.
Okay. Let's get Allison.
You can go ahead and unmute. Yeah, hi.
No, 1 second. All right. Yeah, I'm fine. Oof, I'm just worried about her. Yeah.
Oh, let me go ahead and mute. I'm sorry, Sasha, I'm going to have to mute you. It seems like a side conversation. Allison, I still see your hand raised. If you had a question, just go ahead and unmute. I can't unmute. I don't know why. Sorry. But I will try. So Simon, if you've made me the host, then I can make her the co-host. She already should be a co-host, so she should be able to unmute and do whatever she needs.
I think I've taken care of Allison.
Okay.
Allison, you should be able to speak now and do your
Hi,
presentation.
everybody. I can speak. I can't present slides or start my video.
Yeah, you'll have to do that, Simon, unless you make me the host.
I will make you the host.
All right.
Hold on a
Sorry
sec.
about this, folks. I did not realize.
Here we go.
Wayne, thank you for the presentation. Nice to see you.
Nice to see you.
Okay,
Guillermo, I
Allison,
think you're all set.
you should go ahead and be a co-host now.
Hey.
So there is a question from Holly that she comments it was encouraging. Are there other universities learning directly from Cornell's experiment? And maybe in addition to other universities, maybe other institutions of any kind?
That's a great question. And yes, there are a variety of institutions that are currently working on very similar projects. In West Virginia, the university has drilled a borehole. They've hit some technical challenges that they're working on. And in Illinois, the university is also working on geothermal energy. We're in discussion with them to see whether there might be some, other than our academic shared work, whether there might be some advocacy work that the universities could take on together to help move the agenda forward with legislators. The city of Toronto just reached out today. They're moving forward with a deep geothermal well for a waterfront redevelopment project, which is kind of exciting.
Great. Thank you. Someone else asked above, it's a very interesting presentation. How much of the material needs to be extracted when you dig? I don't know if that makes sense.
That's another really good question. So a well, you can think of it as an average of about a foot in diameter. And we imagine our production wells will be about 10,000 feet deep and maybe another 6,000 or 7,000 feet long horizontally. So they'd be in a large L shape. This is several tons of material. And one of the things I'm really excited about right now is we're working on a plan to take that product, that material, which would be called drill cuttings. And we have found that drill cuttings meet ADA requirements for resurfacing recreational and bicycle paths. So we're hoping that geothermal drilling cuttings can be repurposed and standardized to build zero carbon commuter trails for people who want to be riding bicycles, electric bicycles, etc., in our communities.
And are there any concerns with, someone asked, returning fluid used for the earth source heat system? Sorry, returning cooler water deep underground.
That's also another really good question. All geothermal systems work on a temperature differential. So returning fluids are always colder than the fluids that are extracted. Another way of thinking about it is the fluid that is injected is colder and it pushes the warm fluid out. So where the thermal gradient is much greater than Cornell, so Cornell is quite a low temperature reservoir. Other places where we are measuring 185 Fahrenheit, other places are measuring 300 or 400 or 450. And in those environments, the thermal stress imposed by the introducing cold fluids actually can crack the rock. So it's an important part of the total reservoir engineering solution to make sure that the stresses being imposed are maintained within a safe operating range. But at Cornell, we're not in that temperature range.
All right, thank you. There are some other questions in the chat, but we're running quite over and we really want to hear from Allison still. So we're just going to go to her next. If Allison, you want to go ahead and share your slides, we'll move to that. And
Great.
if we have some time toward at the end, we'll address the remaining questions.
Okay, let me just pull up my slides. All right, it's nice to be here. I spoke this morning about agriculture and climate change and the work we're doing with that I led with Debbie Aller on the New York State Climate Impacts Assessment for Ag. And this afternoon, this session is all about meeting climate goals. And I want to talk to you about a program that we have in partnership with Sea Grant and Cornell Cooperative Extension called the Cornell Climate Stewards Program. And I would argue that we can have all the technology in the world, but if we have not educated New York State residents or helped them understand climate change and given them ways to get involved, or we haven't helped our municipalities with capacity to address climate change, then we're going to be very challenged to meet the goals of the New York State climate law, CLICPA law. So let me talk to you about this program. So this is the Cornell Climate Stewards Program, and this was developed maybe 4 years ago based on a program that we had a grant from the USDA NIFA. And this was one of 4 pilot programs or curriculum development programs funded nationally. Cornell won this project to work in the Northeast with other land-grant universities. And we, as part of that study, we wanted to ask, are communities prepared or taking action for climate change? What do communities need? Can trained master volunteers help their communities? What factors would impact the success of an extension climate master volunteer program, and how should it be structured, and is there interest? And we found that most communities in the Northeast are not adequately prepared for climate change or taking the deep action to prepare. Maybe no surprise there. There had been at that time some work on planning, but many municipalities didn't have the funds to implement those plans to help with adaptation or mitigation. In terms of mitigation, we saw that many communities would tackle low-hanging fruit, lighting in buildings as an example, but wouldn't have the funding or hadn't done the planning to do more higher level mitigation or adaptation work. And we found that communities, a key barrier is that they have low capacity and need support, especially rural communities. If you think about how many communities there are in New York State, many of those have a supervisor or town board or staff that's volunteer or very, very part-time. They're not trained in environment or climate work. And so trained extension volunteers can help in their communities. My colleague Shorna Allred and I published a paper about this topic. So you could look at that. So our program is really based on other extension master volunteer programs. The most well-known is Master Gardener Volunteer Program. And we wanted to know why these programs are so successful, and could we develop a climate change master volunteer program? The value of these programs is huge. They help build the capacity of the local community that they're working with. They could increase the public's understanding of climate science and solutions. And we see this quote here from an interviewee: in education, it isn't how much you have committed to memory or even know. It's about being able to differentiate what you do know and what you don't. It's knowing where to get the information. So another aspect of how important these volunteers are, these are just some figures. In 2018, there were 86,000 Extension Master Gardener volunteers in the United States, contributing a huge value in their time and their expertise. And there are about 50,000 extension volunteers roughly in New York State, participating in many programs in volunteering for 4-H, for master gardeners, for master watershed steward programs, composting. So maybe you out there working across New York State are familiar, or maybe you are an extension volunteer. So anyone who's over 18 could become a climate steward if they're committed to training and volunteering to work in the community. They go through a rigorous application, interview, reference check, and then we are definitely trying to committed to promoting equal program opportunities. So I want to give you an overview of the program. This is our mission statement. We're not really focused on training volunteers who then will make changes in their home. That was a program that was run in Oregon. Our focus, and we as of last year, it was only California and New York State that had an extension climate steward program. Our focus in New York State is helping communities reduce their climate impacts and prepare for climate change. This is an outline of the training we offer. It's a 12-week program. It is very rigorous. All of these modules were developed with input from the Earth and Atmospheric Science Department here at Cornell and developed with extension educators that are trained. So this was really co-developed with our extension partners. So we're training volunteers to understand the science of climate change, how it's impacting New York State. We added a module on climate justice, how to work with local governments and communities. We then introduce them to mitigation and focus on what are some examples of what volunteers could do. And the same for adaptation, introducing the concepts and then focusing on examples of adaptation in the community, how to effectively communicate climate change. And then throughout this 12-week program, we help volunteers identify a community project they'd want to work on, and then they present that plan. So this is about 24 hours of training. We've done it online and in person, with some extension offices have run it in person. Each week we review materials through a PowerPoint lecture. There's a lot of interaction during that lecture. We have a break. We also go through a case study. There's an activity and a group discussion, and usually breakout sessions each week. After that, stewards have completed that training, then they have to agree to do 40 hours of community service project in year 1 to be certified as a climate steward. And I'll show you some of the projects that they're working on. We start off in week 1, getting stewards thinking about their project plan of what they want to do. And then we keep working on that throughout the 12 weeks so that by the end of the 12 weeks, they have a solid plan of what's realistic, what's really needed in their community. So we are definitely also supporting the New York State Climate Smart Communities Program. We're giving our stewards a lot of training on this program and what's needed, and then hopefully they can go out and work in their community, and all of those actions can help their community become a registered climate smart community or certified. Apologize for my dog. Let me shut the door. Okay. So here are some outcomes. We've run 2 trainings with cooperative extension associations, so train the trainer. And that has resulted in 18 counties across the state being trained, which is pretty exciting. We've also run 2 cohorts of stewards. And so you can see the first cohort is in red here. We ran it in Dutchess, New York City, Monroe, Seneca, Tompkins, and Ulster County, and had 53 stewards complete the program. And this spring, we had 9 more counties that we had trained, and you can see the yellow stars of where the training was run. So in that time, we have trained 102 Cornell climate stewards. And these are some of the outcomes, some of the quotes here. I love the program. I still have a lot to learn, but it was well organized and it has motivated me and set me on a path to community engagement. A lot of what we hear is in climate change action is that people feel overwhelmed. They don't know, they want to do something, but they don't know how to get involved. So this quote here, I was glad to be connected to a community of folks who can act as a support network for carrying out climate change actions. We also did a pre and post evaluation across all of the measures, 10 questions. We saw positive increases that were statistically significant in terms of knowledge gains about climate change, understanding, and also feeling these volunteers feeling comfortable and having the capacity to then go out and do work. So these are some of the success stories, and you can see these on the website. This volunteer here, Lynn Bailey from Hurley, is just amazing. She worked with her town to develop both a community and a government greenhouse gas inventory. She also trained some Cornell students who then used that model and were able to develop a community and government greenhouse gas inventory for Schenectady County. So that was pretty amazing. Some volunteers have worked on plant-based diets. Nancy Jacobson here in the spotlight is from Ithaca, New York, and she developed a website and resources on climate change mitigation for agriculture with Cornell Cooperative Extension, Tompkins County. We had this volunteer, also super amazing, led a task force to introduce batteries. He's a retired engineer, so he was using his resources to help his community to transition to an electric grid vehicles. So those are just some of the volunteer projects. And if you're interested in learning more in your county, these are the contacts. We're not quite sure. This is run on bare bones funding. We're not quite sure.
Anyone, first of all,
what we're going to do this
hear
fall,
me?
but we'd like to at least offer the training again in these counties, potentially bring on 1 or 2 additional. So thank you very much. If you have any questions, we want these volunteers to have a community of like-minded peers and to be learning, and then to go out and have fun and feel empowered.
Because
There's some
the other
my contact information if you would like to. And I'll stop sharing. Guillermo, I whizzed through that. Thank you, Sarah. Does anyone have any questions? Do we have any CCE? I knew you'd be here. Nancy is here. Nancy Jacobson. Climate steward and climate change volunteer extraordinaire. And Holly's here. Oh, Holly.
Sorry, Allison, I couldn't unmute because I wasn't host again. I was unhosted. Sorry about all the issues, folks. But yeah, thank you, Allison, for that. There are some questions coming in. I see Tom's hand up also, if you want to just jump to his question. Tom, if you want to unmute yourself, or I can unmute you, I believe.
Feel free when you.
Hi, my name's actually Sinette. Allison, your contact information disappeared very quickly. Is there a way to get that typed back into the chat or something like that? Thanks.
It's amc256@cornell.edu. And it's, I'll put the link to Climate Stewards here.
All right,
Holly and Nancy Jacobson's stories are up on the website.
pretty broad topic areas to get covered there. Sarah, I'm really sorry I missed your presentation. But between Allison's and the previous one, quite a broad topic area. Other questions, comments, just raise your hand. Or we have a couple minutes till we have to transition over to the next. Let me see what the next one is. There's a break until 2:30, and then the annual meeting, which is open to all. So just another minute and that annual meeting is gonna start up.